And welcome back into another post-game show here on the YouTube channel. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, here at the Hockey Writers. And we've got another Battle of Alberta game in the books, joined in by Jim Parsons, and Mariah Stark is joining the post-game show today too. And I mean, this game was more like it. I mean, it wasn't a crazy barn burn 9-6 craziness. 5-3 was the final score, and Edmonton Oilers tied the series and play a lot better. So we'll talk a bit about that. Connor McDavid had a couple points. Draisaitl had 3 points. Zach Hyman had a goal. And then on the Flames side, a couple fourth liners, Brett Ritchie. And, I mean, what do you got to say of this game? This game was a lot better played by both sides. We'll start with you, Jim. What was your impressions of the game? Just reaction after this one?
Well, it was more of a hockey game. I was telling you before we went on the air here. I said, when the announcer talks about the score in terms of a CFL football game, and he's saying one team's got a touchdown and an extra point conversion and the other team's got 2 field goals, that's probably not a standard hockey game, right? So game one was not a normal hockey game. This was still 8 goals. 5-3 is a lot of goals. I mean, considering Calgary came off a series with nobody scored against Dallas ever. This is still a big thing. Daryl Sutter's not going to be happy. But for the Oilers, this was a much better rounded game. They started off poorly again, which seems to be their thing. They do this all the time. But they were able to kind of get their composure, where in game one, they couldn't. They couldn't figure out how to kind of get it back, and they were playing this wheel and deal, run and gun, kind of whatever. They got caught up. They still let it slip. This game, they sort of settled back in, got back into their stuff a little bit. They played more to their system, which they did not do in game one. And that was the difference maker. They just sort of settled in, even though the game got away from them early. Again, it was 2-0 pretty quickly. They didn't let it rattle them, right? They didn't kind of get out of their head and get out, and they totally did in game one. So this was a much better performance by them. And it showed, because if you were to say coming into this series, they could leave Calgary 1-1, they'd have taken it. Regardless of game one, they would have left this home, go back to Edmonton with 2 games, being 1-1. You're happy if you're Edmonton, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I mean, on the Calgary side, like you said, Daryl Sutter's probably not happy that they allowed another 5 goals. And, Mariah, what did you think about this game from an outside perspective, not normally covering both these teams? What did you think about this game?
Well, at first I was like, here we go again, when Calgary got the goals to start with, and then Edmonton came back. I'm like, okay, this is going to be a high scoring game. And then they kind of just settled down a little bit. And I gotta say, from an outside perspective, as much as I love the Minnesota Wild and their speed, those 2 teams are very quick.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, where's the puck? What's going on? I'm not used to that level of speed. I mean, the Wild had bursts, but it's just like, whoa, okay, that's a whole nother level. And I can see why Calgary kind of rolled over us. And it was just like, okay. And I mean, Edmonton just brought it. I mean, Calgary was kind of they were composed, but there wasn't the extra step towards the end. They tried, but they couldn't get it to go.
Yeah. I mean, looking at that speed, I mean, Connor McDavid just, what these playoffs, he's been just leading he leads the playoffs in scoring, and added another 2 points today. And, Jim, with McDavid and by extension, Leon Draisaitl, who's playing hurt. We all know this. But from my perspective, he looked a lot better. And, he did have that burst in game one as well. And then he had the goal. I believe it was the final goal of the game, as 2 on a burst of speed. So what'd you think of his game in game 2, playing hurt still?
Well, it's deceiving, right? Because from everything we're understanding, that Draisaitl's dealing with what we think is a high ankle sprain. You can't imagine he's even like 75%. You know what I mean? Like, he can't be anywhere near what you'd think, but he looks decent sometimes. Like, actually played on the 6-on-4 where the Flames pulled the goalie and they had the power play. Like, he was penalty killing, and he has not done that all series because they simply didn't want to overplay him, right? But he ended up playing 23 minutes and 16 seconds tonight. Like, he played more than McDavid did. So that will lead you to believe that maybe he's in better shape than he is. I still think he's nursing something. I think he's hurt, but he looked pretty good. And if this is the effort level that he's going to continue to be able to provide for the Oilers, then that's good news, right? If you're Edmonton, because the ability, like, he's probably fighting through it, but the ability to play that much and still be effective and then score the goal. Like that's two very similar goals in 2 games where he's shown that he's quicker than anybody he's trying to race to the puck to get it. Like, so that's good news, right? If you're dealing with, you've got one good foot and you're still out racing everybody, like it's probably a good sign, right? But yeah, he battled through. And the fact that the Calgary out hit Edmonton again, like 40-27, I think it was, and he's still fighting through it. I mean, that's a really good sign.
Yeah, well, it is. And the thing is, if he can get, I don't know if it's going to get better as time goes on. I mean, a high ankle sprain, depending on the severity of it, can take a long time to recover. And if you keep playing on it, it'll probably take longer, right? So looking at, we know Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, both were good in the game, but there's another guy that's been really good in game 1. He had a couple goals. He scored the goal that put him ahead shorthanded. Zach Hyman. I mean, everyone knows who watched him in Toronto, Toronto fans didn't like it when he left, and the Oilers signed him that big contract. He's sure proving that. I mean, especially he's a playoff performer. I mean, I think he is built for the playoffs. So what do you think about Zach Hyman's game?
Well, this is why they have him, right? Like, this is why you give him, 7 years? Like, this is the player that they thought they needed, not only to grind and pump and do all these things in the regular season, but when it comes time to the playoffs, which he didn't really get a chance to do for Toronto because he was hurt, but you get to see it, right? Like, this is a guy, no matter what's going on, no matter how much he's hit, like he took a nasty cross check in game 1. He just fought right through it, right? Like, he's a battler. You watch him play, like I was saying when we were watching the game today, McDavid and Hyman are 2 very different styles, but you can't get the puck off either one of them. Like, McDavid will just pivot around you and move at light speed and you can't get it. Hyman just outworks you. Like, he just absolutely will. He's dogged on the puck. You can't take it away. Sometimes he'll skate around the entire zone for a minute, but he eventually always makes the right decision. Like, he rarely makes mistakes. And that is so key for the Oilers because they don't have a lot of that, right? They have guys with inexperience, not a lot of guys that are used to this sort of pressure and will handle it well. And Hyman always does. He's been a warrior for these guys, and it paid off for him tonight because he got a really important goal and at a time that they really needed it.
Yeah, I mean, I've always admired his game, and I wanted the Canucks to try to go for him, but the thing is, he was just going to be too expensive. But I mean, he is a playoff guy. He's a guy that you signed to play, to be that way in the playoffs, and he's sure showing it right now, like you said. Mariah, I want to talk about the ice time on both sides. Well, mostly the Calgary Flames on, Daryl Sutter doesn't like to line match, but like they mentioned in the game too, he does play certain guys more because he likes the line. Like Michael Backlund's line played a lot more than Gaudreau's. Wouldn't you think that Gaudreau should have been playing a bit more, especially when they were down trying to push for offense?
Yes and no. The whole line matching thing has been relatively newer to me as I get more into the writing and everything. That before, when I'd watch casually as a fan, I kind of never really knew about it, so to speak, I guess. And now I kind of pay more attention to it. And I feel like the bigger scorers sometimes do better when they're played less than more. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but kind of to use the Wild as an example, because that's the team I know the best.
Yeah.
They Kaprizov, they would play him high minutes to start with, and they realized he was doing well, but not as good as he could be. Once they lowered the minutes, he seemed to do better and be more comfortable. So I don't know if that's what Sutter was trying to do with Gaudreau. I haven't seen as much of Calgary this season to know for sure if he does better when he plays more or less, but that's the only reason I can think. And maybe the other line was doing better against them. I don't really understand the idea behind it. You'd want to play your scores as much as possible, but it's going to be a long series, as we can see. So maybe that's a part of it too.
That's certainly a fair point. I sorry to cut you off.
No, sorry. No.
Say that's a fair point. But one thing I will argue against it, not to disagree with you or at all. I'm just saying Gaudreau played really well tonight. He was maybe the most dangerous Flame. Like when he had the puck, he was on it. He was really dangerous. He looked like he was always like an opportunity to score. And if this series doesn't go the Flames' way, there's going to be a heavy debate about Daryl Sutter's playing and rolling these lines, because he doesn't line match ever. Like he just rolls them, right? And so if they end up, and I don't want to get ahead of myself here at all, but if they end up that it goes to 7 or they end up losing this series or what have you, that'll be a talking point in Calgary for sure.
Yeah. Well, especially because, Gaudreau's, we all know his contract is up after this season. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think that definitely will be a talking point, as if they don't get through it. But it's 1-1 now, and both sides know they can score on each other's goaltenders. And but I want to talk about the goaltend just first, and before we get to looking ahead to the next game, is Mike Smith. He was pulled in the first game, looked really good in this game. Yeah, that, I mean, they keep saying it was a great backhand pass. It just got by a couple guys.
Yeah, I don't know if that was on purpose or not. It's Mike Smith, so maybe, but I'm not sure.
But what'd you think about Mike Smith? I mean, he bounced. I mean, he does this. He has a bad game and he bounces back usually in the next game. But for Woodcroft to throw him back into the fire and say you're going to deal with it, we're not going to start Koskinen. How'd you like how he played in this game?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
I early, I thought, oh crap, here we go. Because the second goal, especially, right? Because he dropped it, and then the rebound, and it didn't look great. And for a while, I watched the game. I thought, man, every time he makes a save, I'm still nervous. Like I don't know that he's got it. It wasn't until like kind of midway through the second period that I started going, okay, he's feeling it now. Like he's engaged, he's involved, and he was very vocal. Like he was screaming at the referees on that one Blake Coleman interference call. He was getting bugged by the Calgary a lot in the crease, and he was very vocal about it. So that was when I was like, okay, he's engaged now. Like he's into the game and he's playing Mike Smith hockey. So when he's like that, it's usually a pretty good sign. But for a while I was kind of nervous. I'm like, oh man, this start. And even when he's making saves, I'm like, he doesn't look like he's got him well under control. And then he settled in. So I'm glad to see that, because I think in game one, the overwhelming whatever emotion of being in Calgary against his former team in a second round play, I think that got to him, and it might have gotten to him early again, but he was able to get rid of it. So I think that's a really good sign.
Yeah, well, he does play better when he's into the game emotionally, because he's a very fiery goaltender. And, so we've seen it multiple times wherever he's played. So,
and that's why I wasn't at all surprised that he started game two. Like I knew immediately after game one that Woodcroft would go back to him, because he's the guy that wants to prove that what he saw in game one is not what he does. Right.
No, that's right. And, looking at the other side, Mariah with Markstrom, I mean, the first game, he allowed a lot of goals he normally doesn't. They kept trying to throw in the same spots by his glove side, kind of under the glove. There's a few times he did look kind of awkward. Does he look different, do you think, from what you've seen of him? Does he look different in this series so far from the goaltender? Usually, I mean, Calgary, usually he's really good.
Yeah, I would like to say one thing about Smith. I loved when he did the glove save on Coleman and he shoved it in his face. I was laughing so hard. I'm like, I love it. I love when
I saw it. Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree that he like hitting or anything, but I just loved it. He's just like, ha. But Markstrom, he does seem a little, I don't know what it is, but he does seem different. Not that he's out of position or anything, he just doesn't seem, I guess if this is the right kind of term, like as focused or I don't know, he just seems like he's not as on his game as normal. I don't know if Edmonton's getting to him. I mean, they were at home where they had a pretty good home record, if I remember right.
Yeah.
I mean, the building's loud, you can tell everyone's into it, and it just seemed he wasn't the goalie from the regular season that I saw, and like we could get nothing past him.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously Edmonton has some great shooters. Clearly McDavid, there was no stopping that one.
Yeah.
So that one is kind of what, but I don't know. He just seemed a lot more just not as sharp and focused as he normally was.
Yeah. I mean, he had some great saves in this game.
Yeah.
I think he looked better than game one. But, allowing 11 goals over 2 games is not normally what he does. So looking at stats of the regular season, he's a Vezina Trophy finalist. Allowing 11 and 2 it's not usually pretty good. So, so we'll see how the goaltending shakes out in the next game. But looking ahead to the next game, is going to Edmonton. Jim, what did you think the Oilers need to do better? I mean, they're still going to have to improve because those starts, I mean, come on, you can't be doing that every game.
Yeah, my storyline for the Oilers' key to success here actually doesn't change. Whether they play on the road or they play at home, I have always contended they have got to get their head right. When they start a hockey game, they can't let the emotion of being in Calgary affect them. They also can't let the emotion of playing in front of their own fans affect them, right? Because they have already said, I mean, David's admitted it, that they let that kind of sink in, and the realization that like this is a big deal can get to them, and they don't want to have that happen. And they were able to escape that in the final end of the series with LA, and they were kind of like, okay, let's just remember that we are very good at home, that this is a team that we can beat when we're at home. Like they have a really good opportunity here to play well in the next 2 games and kind of set the pace for the rest of the series, right? So if they can remember what they do well, play their system, not let the emotion of being in Edmonton and having an opportunity to go up 2-1 or 3-1, even if they're really lucky, they got to just stick to what they do well. And if they can do that and not get overwhelmed with Edmonton's going to be crazy. Like Calgary was hot tonight. Edmonton is going to be insane, and they can't let that bother them. Like, and I don't want to say bother them because it's a great thing to have, right? You just love to have those fans behind you, but it can be overwhelming. And so you don't want it to be, right? I think that's the key for them.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, the line adjustments that Woodcroft made with that second line looked really good. Mm-hmm. And if they can get some balance and kind of temper that emotion, I think they'll have a good game again. So, but they got to get off to that good start. I know it from covering Vancouver, the Canucks, so many bad starts, and that just puts you behind the 8 ball so early. It's not sustainable. You can't always be trying to come back in games after falling down so early, right? Mariah, looking at Calgary, what do they have to do? I mean, to kind of bounce back from this one, because first game they allowed 6, this one they allowed 5. I mean, Daryl Sutter's gonna be really harping on defense, I'm sure.
Yeah. I think staying out of the penalty box probably would help. I mean, they let in 1 goal, penalty kill, so it's not terrible. It was both sides did, so, but still staying out of that box. And I mean, they were pretty composed. They just couldn't find that extra step. Once they start scoring, they gotta lay it on and just keep going. They can't, not that they let up, but it's go ahead and score 8. Just keep scoring, because Edmonton has proven they're able to come back. Right. So just do Markstrom a favor and just keep going. Just keep it up.
The thing is Sutter doesn't like that fire wagon hockey. I mean, throughout his whole coaching career, I'm sure he's just sitting on the bench like, what the hell, like allowing another 5 goals. So, I mean, tightening it up, I think both sides are gonna look at that again, is tightening up, because there's 8 goals in the game. So we'll see how it goes in Edmonton, but that will be interesting to see. But I think this one, now that it's 1-1, I think this series is going the distance, and we've said probably 6 or 7. So that's what it's looking to be trending towards. We'll see how many goals are going to be scored in the next game, because it's been a high scoring series so far. So thanks, Jim and Mariah, for coming on the postgame show. And, make sure you're watching all of our postgame shows if you want to. I mean, if you don't like the teams, then I'm probably not going to be watching them. But if you want to know what I'll, hit up these postgame shows. They're on every time right after the game. So stay tuned for the next one, where we're keep having fun in the second round of the playoffs here.